Hi, and welcome to Chapter 8. In Chapter 8, Session 1, we're going to start working on using multimedia in our HTML page and some CSS to make it move. Let's get started. To introduce the concept of multimedia, you have to understand that the original purpose of the internet, of HTML and web pages, was simply to share text information over hypertext documents. No one really thought about the idea of doing videos over the internet. That wasn't really part of the concept. But obviously, as things move, we go ahead and do that. So by now, probably more than 80, 85, almost 90% of internet traffic is videos. This is not how the internet was originally designed, so our original HTML didn't do a very good job of handling this. With original HTML, we had a codec, which is a compressor or decompressor, that will take the video and smush it all down so that it can take less space transferring over the internet. Video takes a huge amount of space, and so we needed to compress it and then decompress it once it gets to wherever it's going. Two different types of compression. We can have lossy, which is compression that actually removes non-essential data. It removes actual frames if they're not necessary or if they're kind of redundant to make the file smaller. This can cause some issues when it's decompressed and put back into its original form because there may be some skipping or there may be some loss of quality as it goes along. The other type of compression is called lossless. Lossless compression removes redundant or duplicate information by actually counting how many bits there are in certain values. It doesn't actually lose any data. It just compresses it by changing the format in which the data is being sent. When you think about stuff being on the internet, videos being on the internet, we have a container or an object that holds all of that packaging, transportation, and presentation of all of our codec data of our videos. So we need to keep track of that. And each browser is going to handle different codecs. So you really needed to prepare for cross-browser support. It was really a big deal. Originally, the way we got video across before current times is we would use plugins. So these were pieces of software that was designed to allow you to run a video or audio or any type of multimedia on your browser. We could also use what are called embedded objects, which we can still use today. These are things like Adobe Flash or Apple's QuickTime or Windows Media Player. All three of these are plugins that can go into your browser and allow you to watch videos. They all required a separate installation, so they were not part of the browser by default. There wasn't really a common plugin for all browsers or OSs or devices, so you always had to, if you wanted to put in any multimedia, you had to prepare for whatever plugin happened to be there. There was no common one that was like, oh, everybody uses Adobe Flash, let's just use that. So when you designed your HTML, I mean, if you can imagine how irritating it is every time you have to put in a CSS tag and put in cross-browser support, imagine putting in cross-browser support for all of your audio and having to put all of that in separately, and it started to get kind of annoying. There was also some security risks with plugins because you could never be 100% sure that the plugin that you were using was a valid or authentic plugin. It was pretty easy to get, virus versions of Adobe Flash or Apple QuickTime. There were some backdoors in there. HTML5 fixed that, and it allowed integrated support with HTML5 for both audio and video. Yay, thank goodness, because that saved a lot of confusion when you were trying to do multimedia using your browsers. So we're going to show you how you can do HTML5's audio and video on your web page. The first element we're going to talk about is our audio element. Now, with an audio element, you have a couple of different options here. First off, we can talk about the different codecs that are being used, so you can do them in different formats. You can choose MP3, which is the most common of the formats. You can use AAC, which is Advanced Audio Coding. You can use OGG, or you could use WAV files. All four of these will work, but they work differently with different browsers. And as you can see from the cross-browser support here, MP3 does not work with the Opera desktop or mobile. So what we like to do is if you have an audio element, we want it in two different versions, just to make sure that everything gets covered. One of the easier ways to do this is to do an MP3 for everything except opera, and then do an OGG for your opera. And that way you can know that they'll all get covered. You can choose any selection of these, and you can choose to avoid, just do MP3 and just say, if you have an opera browser, sorry, it's not going to work. But generally we don't like to do that for obvious reasons. When we do our audio, it can be embedded using the audio element, and then there are some controls that go along with that. The controls allow you to play or pause or rewind, but you have the option of turning off the controls or not including them. This is actually kind of annoying. This is what you do in those ads where they make you watch the video to prove that you actually did it or something. So I would always include the controls so that my users can always play or rewind. You have options like autoplay. When the user goes straight to the site, do you want it to play automatically, or do you want the user to have to push play? Do you want it to run on a loop? Do you want it muted, which is kind of silly for an audio element, but you can. You can also do some preloads, and then of course you have to give it the source element. And that source element is going to be a URL. It's going to be a link that's going to be somewhere in your code. So let's go add our audio element and see how that looks. This is our Royal Wedding webpage. Royal Wedding is a movie from the 1950s with Fred Astaire and Jane Powell, and this is the page. So we have some details down the side. We've got our cast, and then we have our listen up and our in focus. This is where we're going to be adding our elements. So inside of our listen up section, we are going to be adding an aside element for our audio controls. So we're going to scroll down a little bit. We're going to scroll up a little bit. This is our royal.html. Don't forget to rename it and add your author and date. So we have our article and our listen up aside and our in focus aside. So we're going to be inside of our listen up aside, which is this section here, line 89 through 98. And after the last P tag, so paragraph tag, we're going to go ahead and add in our audio element. To do that, we're going to actually start with a paragraph that's going to say, click the button to hear it. And now we'll go ahead and add our audio. We are going to add controls because we do want the user to be able to control it. We're going to add our first source, src equals, and it's going to be the CP overture. And we're going to do our MP3 first. Make sure you tell it what type it is. And this is an audio / MP3. And we'll close it. Next, we'll go ahead and add our OGG source, just in case we have some cross-browser issues with an MP3. CP overture, and we're going to use our OGG. And its type is an audio / OGG. Okay, that's it. We have our audio control, and we added it in there. Let's see what happens. So you can see I'm using Firefox. I'm using Edge. And this is what it looks like in Edge. It went ahead and added the controls. I can go ahead and push the play button and listen to the overture. I can change the volume. I can mute it. I can select the individual volume, and I can select where I want to hear insights. This is how the controls are going to work. Okay, so that is our musical overture, being able to add in our audio element. Each of the different media players in the browsers look just a little bit different. And I have the examples here between Chrome and Internet Explorer, Opera, and Firefox. And you can just kind of see some of them, the volume is just a little different, and the look and feel just is a little different for each of the different browsers. You can modify this. You can add CSS to your audio element. You can add a block shadow. You can change the margins. You can add the width. And these are all things that you can do just to make your audio player stand out a little bit better or look a little bit better based on whatever situation you're in. One of the things that we do like to do with an audio is, in the off chance that the user is using a browser that does not have the ability to read audio tags, we like to add a piece of text at the bottom of all of our media choices. So if we have our MP3 first and then our OGG, after that, we're going to just go ahead and add a little paragraph that says, your browser doesn't support HTML5. And what's going to happen is when the audio goes in, As opposed to what you would expect with cascading style sheets, the audio is going to pick the first option that works. So we're going to put the MP3 first because it works on the most browsers. So we're going to look at the MP3, and if it can't read the MP3, then it will go down to the OGG. If it can't read the OGG, then it will go down to the paragraph. So that gives you the 3 different options of your source. In audio controls, any text that is between the 2 audio tags is not going to be shown if the audio works. So it's really important. You can go ahead and put that text in there and know that it won't show up unless the source itself doesn't work. We have decided that we want to add a little bit more formatting because we want to add some box shadows and a couple of little things to our screen here. Just to give you an idea, this is my Firefox, and you can just see that looks a little bit different, right? Because it's a little bit different. That's okay. Each of the different browsers looks a little different. So let's go ahead and add in our box shadow. We're going to put this inside of our media.css for our audio player. And we're just simply going to call it audio because that's the tag we need to deal with. And we're going to add our box shadow. We're also going to do a display of box or block, a margin of 10 and auto. Because we want to have it centered, so the auto is going to be left and right, 10 is going to be top and bottom. And we're going to make its width 90% of its parent. So it's going to be just a little smaller in this screen because of the parent. Now, if I refresh this, it won't work because we haven't added the CSS tag here. Don't forget, if you ever refresh and go, why isn't it showing up? That's because you didn't add the CSS tag. So you can see, got a little smaller, and it added a little bit of a box shadow here. Now, this viewer doesn't really look that great with that because it kind of has the curved edges. So we might have wanted to add in a border radius there. If I bring back up my Firefox, we scroll down, you can see that's what the box shadow looks like with Firefox. So this is where when you do your CSS styles, it's useful to pay attention to how does it look in multiple browsers. We do want to include some text underneath our audio just in case the user can't see it. So after our OGG, we're going to go ahead and do paragraph italics. Just to add that extra little. Now, this browser does support HTML5, so that's not too much of a problem. So as I said, the old way we used to do things was to embed objects into your HTML page using the embed element. This was different than the basic audio controls that we're talking about. This would be using something like your QuickTime or your media player or your Flash. And you can assign some details. Now, all of those are dependent on which plugin the user happens to have. So you can add all of them and hope that whatever audio player that they use is going to be able to understand. So there is a show controls and there is a controller. There is an auto play and there is an auto start. And they're all different for each of the different plugins. Remember, if your audio will select the one that works first, we're going to put in an embedded object last because we're hoping that the user can read the sources of either the MP3 or the OGG before we get to the embedded. But if it can't, for whatever reason, you can always add an embedded object at the end to make sure that at least something is going to come up.